This is In the Middle with Josh and Sarah Siders. We get it. You're probably going through something that's asking you to dig deep, think differently, and hold on against the odds.
So these are our thoughts about starting new things, shutting some things down, and being with you, right there in the middle. Welcome. I'm Josh.
And I'm Sarah. Welcome to In the Middle.
We are so glad you're here. This is our first episode. So
Woo!
we're here.
Yeah.
We're figuring things out. We're in the middle of our first episode. So there you go. So hey,
Hi.
how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. It's good to be here. It's comfy. This is real coffee. This isn't stage coffee. And so
Yeah.
just enjoying my morning.
Yeah. So we've been talking about doing a podcast for like years.
Oh,
right?
This is like a 9-year-old idea minimum.
Yeah. And so it kept morphing over the years. We did some Facebook live streaming before that got, like everybody in the pandemic did that.
Yeah.
So we've dabbled here and there.
Yeah.
But we are committing. We're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So
9 years ago, when we were at this coffee shop in Tahoe.
Tahoe. Yes.
And we were like, we should do a podcast. It was 2015.
Yeah.
And we were like, what should we call it? And we, the kids were young.
Yeah.
The church was new.
Yeah.
And we were like, I think it's something like rookie life or rookie something.
Yeah.
It's really funny that we're like only 9 years later and we're like in the middle. It's like, really? 9 years later, you're in the middle?
Yeah.
Like, so in 9 years, you're just gonna be like, and it's over.
Yeah. Right. I think that's our message, is that it's not over.
Right.
But it feels like
you haven't arrived. Like, that's the biggest thing. Like, there's this feeling that at some point you will have figured it out. Like, when you think about yourself when you're in your teens and 20s and, you're like, well, in my 40s, I'll know. You think that you'll have this sense of settledness or like certainty.
Right.
And you don't really know that's what you think you're going to get. But you never really get that. That's never there.
Yeah.
And it's not anyone's fault. It's not your fault that you don't have certainty. It's literally the world cannot produce it for you.
Yeah.
And you can't produce it for yourself.
Yeah.
So it's like about creating that inner world, And so I think like to me, that's the work of being in the middle, is like discovering that sort of these promises of like external security are not actually going to come through. And so you're like, okay, what can I rely on? And it's like, well, I can rely on myself to do the work.
Yeah.
And I can rely on my friends and God.
Yeah.
And even God is like showing up different,
right.
than I expected. And so you're like, it's a feeling of bewilderment and then sorting that.
Right.
I feel like that's what. Right. So I would be curious. I mean, we're talking about it, but like, what does in the middle mean for you? Or to you, like why that?
Yeah, I think you're putting really great words to it, because when you're in the kind of mid journey of life, you're learning to surrender more and more without giving up, right?
Yeah, that's
there is a difference there, because when you surrender, you're realizing I am not in control. I cannot control things. Like when I was younger, I tried to just have a perfectly situated everything so I could show up the way I wanted to and minimize my anxiety. I was externalizing anxiety.
Totally.
And when you mature and you grow a bit, you realize, like, my circumstances, there's always going to be something not going the way I want it to. I cannot control people or circumstances or God or my kids. And so you realize I have to be more in control of myself. I have to have self-control.
You're going to put like, I can't control the spouse.
And the spouse. Well, I thought that was a given.
Yeah. Well, I just thought you should go ahead and put that.
There you go.
Or the cat.
Or the cat who's looking at us from
he might be in the shot.
So if you see a tail come across, that's him. I think going through the middle part and being in the middle is realizing I have work to do on myself.
Yeah.
Not this like self-actualized whatever, not this like be my best self. There's parts of that's true, but it's actually like I need to manage my reactivity and my triggers. I need to not outsource that to everybody else around me. I am looking for a settledness that I'm not going to find out here.
Yeah.
So I draw upon, if you're a person of faith, I draw upon God's Spirit to help me grow and learn and be transformed. Like that's what it's about for me is
Yeah.
learning how to do it. And then from that place, there's a um, I'm generative. I can actually like be creative. If I'm not always looking for everything to be perfect
Yeah.
outside, I can actually like draw upon, the grace. I can draw upon wisdom and actually then be my fullest creative self, and give back to the world
Yeah.
and serve others. If I'm more surrendered and I'm more centered and I'm more settled because of what I've learned in the journey I'm on, I then can, from a place of strength, give away more than I ever could before. Because I was just trying to get, I was just trying to take, I was just trying to
Right.
achieve and, prove myself. But like when you come to a place of not needing that, you can actually like give so much more.
Well, I mean, that's what I was thinking as you're talking. I'm like, well, there's people who go through their whole lives and they're still in like acquisition mode.
Yeah.
And it's a stage that you get to where maybe you realize that you don't want to do that, or that you're sort of satiated, like I don't need anything more, or what I thought it was going to do for me, it's not doing.
Right.
Um, but there's this shift that we get into where for people who are intentionally going through this journey, it's almost like you have built what you're going to build. Not to say that you don't keep, creating things, but that energy of your 20s and 30s of like building and kind of this expectation of like everything's upward and to the right. Um, when you get into this place and you're like, wait a minute, first of all these expectations that I had aren't being met. What do I do with that? How do I like, how do I wrestle with that?
Yeah.
And then, you know, what do I do now with this? You start to feel that like the second half of life is different. And people would say it. People would say things like, you know, you gain weight, you can't lose it, or like, talk about midlife crisis or this stuff like, oh, these people out there at the clubs wearing leopard print and buying sports cars, like,
Yeah.
this, and you're like, okay, that's like someone else's midlife
Yeah.
crisis.
Yeah.
Like, I think that Gen Xers and millennials are, even if we were going to have a midlife crisis, like, I don't know if we're going to, because I think the jury's still out. But like, if we were going to, I don't think that's what it would look like,
No.
because I think we have more information, like we have more emotional intelligence, we have, the standard is higher, I think. But it's like, okay, well, we can't just like repress and be like, oh, I'm emotionally intelligent, or like I'm infinitely young. There was that trend on Instagram, is like these women who are turning 40, like taking a photo of themselves and being like, um I look young, right? I look like I'm 40. And I'm like, what is that? What kind of like, weird desperation that you
Uh-huh.
saw from older people? Like, yeah, we look, you know, young
Yeah.
because we're the oldest we've ever been.
Right.
But like, what is here now for
Right.
us, right? Like,
Right.
what's here now? And I think that shift towards having the option to be truly generous, not to say, again, not everyone chooses this,
I know. Yeah.
but to go, oh, my life isn't just for me and my empire.
Right.
It's like, all these things that I've learned, the good, the bad, the ugly, is for kind of passing back and
Yeah.
building back and
Right.
legacy.
Legacy.
And
Yeah.
legacy becomes this thing that you want to guard, you want to
Yeah.
really protect. And
Yeah.
and so yeah, there's just, those are the shifts that I'm noticing it myself caring about. Um I don't know. There's this convergence of like my body, especially for women. Think about it. Like, you have
Yeah.
childbearing years
Right.
and then they end.
Right.
And so that's a creative, like I'm using my literal body to like create
Mm-hmm.
or nurture. And
Mm-hmm.
it's so energy intensive and it's
Yeah.
it's a lot. But then when that season's over for women, it's like, okay, get out of the way now. Look at all these things I can do. But
Right.
it's not like, maybe people are like, oh, that era's over and now society's going to discard me. And it's like, oh
Mm-hmm.
no, I've never been more dangerous because I don't need to be hot.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to get your approval.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I'm going to go out and do these things that I didn't have
Interesting.
the like capacity, or maybe I was afraid
Mhm.
or vulnerable in some way, or I needed to kind of be in nurture mode and I
Yeah.
needed to kind of like, so I don't know, I just see women who get into their 50s and who go through that transition. It's a role and identity shift. It's a
Right.
physical, like
Right.
hormonal shift,
Yeah.
and it's a relational shift. It's all the things
Yeah.
converging at once. And I think it's so cool. I've started to like really appreciate that women's like life cycle and bodies, like
Yeah.
give them a break and give them a very distinct shift where they get to
Right.
say, I function differently in society now, watch out.
Right. Right.
I'm like, oh yeah. Well, that's like a major flip for me, because I think before I was like, oh, that's negative
Yeah.
or something like
Yeah.
that. But now I'm feeling so much more positive about it. So for me, that's what in the middle partly represent
Yeah.
is the metamorphosis from the just purely creative generative to like, in sort of like building for me, but now
Yeah.
building
Yeah.
for the sake of others, building for the sake of legacy,
Yeah.
and trying to like discover what that means.
So do you like you're connecting in the middle to kind of a life stage or life process? Do you think that there are other ways people can relate to that? Like, is it just wait till you're 40 and then you'll get the podcast? Is there
Yeah.
anything else that you help people realize, like, hey, you're in the middle of something? Like, does it have to be an age thing?
I mean, that's honestly, I would say that that's what gave me the like initial insight was like, oh, being in the middle of your life is a major shift. But anytime you're in the middle of anything, um, we're always in the middle of something,
Yeah.
excuse me.
Right.
We're always in the middle of like you get a new job and then you're in the middle of figuring it out, or you're in the
Right.
middle of getting a promotion, or
Right.
maybe you're dating someone, so you're in the middle of figuring that out, and then maybe you get married, and now you're like, okay, we're in the middle of figuring out our life together, or maybe we want to have kids, or we want to
Mhm.
buy a house, or
Mhm.
you're never like, as soon as you cross one threshold, you're in the middle of something else.
Right.
You're
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
on your way somewhere. There's that moment of like achievement or certainty is so brief.
Yeah.
And so this is like what we experience throughout our whole lives, but I feel that it's so concentrated, it's so bookended. When you get into like your mid 30s, late 30s, 40s, 50s, you feel the compression
Yeah.
that's happening because
Yeah.
you have young kids often,
Right.
you have parents who are getting older. So there's relational compression, generational compression. There's like, okay, what did I not do on the front end of my life that I want to make sure that I do?
Yeah.
What do I have to
Yeah.
grieve that I
Yeah.
do? So I think that's a very
Yeah.
specific stage, but we're never not in the middle.
Right.
And so we got to
Yeah.
get good at it.
It's true. It's really true. And I think there's such a like people cling to past achievements or
Yeah.
these goals that maybe aren't the right goals. And so
That's the
yeah,
identity stuff, though. It's
yeah,
all
yeah, yeah.
identity.
It is. It is. So yeah, for me it was several years ago, I felt like, I had some success, specifically in ministry, and was a part of some really exciting things. And then a couple, circumstances later, and it was like, man, the bottom felt like it dropped out. And
Yeah.
so, who am I if I'm not succeeding?
Yeah.
Who am I if I'm not looked to as kind of like, someone to uh look at as
Oh
successful?
my gosh. Yeah.
Friends kind of like, oh, okay, that's who you are, that's a shock, that sort of thing. And so that all happening a little bit in the
Yeah.
same kind of short season really knocked the wind out of me. Like I'm not sure where to go from here. And so,
Yeah.
setting my sights on not just like I was somebody,
Hmm.
but like what's next for me?
Yeah.
Not that I want to just kind of relive the glory days or bring that back, but like what do I have to look forward to? Obviously my family's great,
Well, yeah.
but it's like if I'm not that anymore, then who am I becoming?
Yeah.
And am I okay with that? Because that's different than what I thought. Um, I know that's a little vague, but it just to your point of like we're always going through something, whether it's like you have a job change, or your daughter gets married, or you have an illness. Like we're just in the middle, And it's okay, I think our big message is like it's okay being there and
Yeah.
learning, like learn what you can where you're at, because you will need that for what is next, what you're coming into, who you're becoming. And I wish I was very fortunate to have a friend in that moment, come alongside me, put his arm around me. It was a brand new friend. And slide a book across the table. I think you need this. Like, it made so much sense
So good.
because he had gone through it and he had had training, in spiritual direction, have already helped people go through that, venture into it, even though, I don't know that I would say I'm out of it. Like, that's the other part, is like, when do you know
Yeah.
you're done? But like, I'm still alive, so there's still more stuff that's probably gonna. So you're right. I'd better get good at it.
Yeah.
I better get good at the downhill slide, because the point, and I took John hiking, our oldest, took him hiking. I said, "Do you know the point of hiking a mountain?" It's like, well, getting to the top, and it's like, well, that's only half of it. It's getting to the top of the mountain, yes, but getting safely down,
Mm,
back to where you
dang.
started.
Dang.
And it's not, that's metaphorical, so that breaks down. Obviously, you don't want to go back to where you started in
Right.
life, but you want to come safely down that.
Yeah.
Now, when
Yeah.
life it happens, circumstances happen, things change, you want to come down safely.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think a lot of people are so unprepared. It's a tumble down instead of a gentle grade
Or
because they're so
just like trying
shocked.
to stay
Or
up,
yeah, clinging to the top. Yeah,
like just
clinging to
being
the
like,
top.
oh, I had this identity, like I had
Yeah,
those
yeah,
successes, or I'm known for, like you talked
yeah. I'm
about. I
not
think
playing.
that's honestly one of the biggest things is
Yeah,
like I'm known for something, and when that thing that you're known for gets pulled out or like it
yeah,
doesn't work,
right.
um, it's so disorienting.
Yeah,
I mean, I know we've both been through that over the last 5 years. And I
yeah,
mean, so it was right before the pandemic, but
yeah.
I mean, people's like, if you just line up like 100, adults, like everyone's last 5 years have been
Oh yeah,
super
yeah.
disorienting.
It's true.
Um, and, maybe you're like, oh, I'm so glad about where I am or where I've landed, but it's like, oof,
Yeah,
you didn't really know from day
yeah,
to day what it was going to be like. And so I feel like my experience, I mean, everyone's 5 years have been challenging, right? But for a lot of us Gen Xers, millennials who are in the middle, we're experiencing the compound
yeah. It's
effects
kind
of
of
being
funny.
in the
It's true.
middle
Yeah,
of our lives with everything that's been going on,
yeah,
um, while having all the tumult
yeah,
from the
yeah,
world and those shifts and everything. And so yeah, it's like, okay, cool. I'm so glad to be trusted with all of this pressure, like,
yeah. Right.
oh,
Yeah,
I don't know if I love this, but at the same time, I agree. Like that book, The Critical Journey,
yeah,
and the model of understanding ourselves with like that kind of intersection of spiritual journey
yeah.
meets psychological development.
Right.
Highly recommend that book, by the
Okay.
way, Janet Hagberg, Critical Journey.
Yeah.
This was like it gave language to the feeling of like, oh, my faith isn't working for me. My health, journey is not working for me. I have like this weight that I can't figure out how to get off. I feel like really I'm this accumulation of disappointment
Oh.
in my life is making me really angry.
The things that worked,
Yeah.
that once worked so well, no longer work anymore.
Yeah.
The tools that I know how to use can't fix this new problem.
Yes. And the people like that I chose to lean on at that time, they're not able to
Yeah.
be, you know, consistent, or maybe they're not in my life anymore, these
Yeah.
different things. And it's like, oh, I've been relying on all these external things to
Right.
kind of like um moor me, to tether me.
Right.
And it was really that I needed to develop my inner
That's
world
right. Yeah.
and develop, the routines, the patterns, the, connection to myself, to God, um, that would help me be tethered going forward. But it's like you don't know until those things kind of snap.
Right. Right.
that's not what you were supposed to be tied to. And I think that in your 30s, really, that's like what um you experience is like kind of grabbing things and going, it's this goal, right? It's this identity, it's this career thing, it's
Yeah.
this, it's the achievement house, it's this relationship, finally to get married or to have a child, or just the things that our culture is like, you know, level achieved,
You're right.
ding.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you're like, cool, I did all those things, or you didn't do those things. To go through that and then just be like, oh, that's not solving all of my problems. Like the things
Right.
that I encounter internally,
Yep.
I either can't cling to all those things that I've gathered around myself. They don't hold me steady in the storm, or they're gone,
Yeah.
or
Right.
they, what, I don't know. It's just like, whew, so disorienting. So,
Okay.
yeah. So that's what it feels like to be in the middle. So, yes, you can be in the middle at any stage of your life.
Yeah.
But if you're in the middle of a circumstance, in the middle of your life, age wise, then you're really in the middle.
Yeah. Yep.
And so it's
And
like,
and we get it.
yes,
So
yes.
get it. So
Yes, yes, we
okay.
totally do. So yeah,
Well said.
a little bit of backstory there,
Good.
I guess we'll keep doing that.
Yeah. 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 More of that'll come up, I'm sure. So
More to come.
I think we have just two questions
Yeah.
that we'll end with. So what are you reading, watching, or listening to, and
Hmm.
what's saving your butt?
Oh, back to back questions.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I'm reading um the books on my on the
There we
bookshelf
are.
here. These are I love my analog books. So I'm reading an old book by Mark Twain. It's
Hmm.
called A Tramp Abroad.
Hmm.
And it's so like you can tell it's just, satire, and it's just really funny. It's apparently um a trip that he took through like Germany, Bavaria, and it's very tongue in cheek because he's like, yeah, we backpacked through Europe, but they don't actually backpack. They like take the train, they take a boat, but
Yeah.
he tells everyone that they're backpacking. And so it's this really like very self-aware,
Hmm.
probably somewhat historical fiction.
Hmm.
And I've just been having so
Yeah.
much
You like
fun with
that?
it because I love his sense of humor.
Yeah.
And I love like looking up all the locations and the places where he is and going,
Yeah.
oh my gosh,
That's
it's
fun.
still there, like that castle, and then going down the rabbit hole with like the people that he talks about. Anyway, it's really, really fun. So I love like I just love the timelessness of literature and
Yeah.
how somebody can stay alive through their words and their personality, and also like the timelessness of the human
Yeah.
experience and the struggle, and being like, oh, they had this problem 100 years ago or 200 years ago. They felt
That's
like
good.
dire about the world.
Right.
So yeah, I
Interesting.
love stuff like that. What are you reading, watching, or listening to before you go?
I am watching Only Murders in the Building.
Well, I'm watching that
I know you
too.
are, but it's a good answer. So season 4 just came out. So
Uh,
Steve Martin, Martin Short, Selena Gomez,
Meryl Streep,
Meryl
no James
Streep.
Levy. It's
Yeah.
packed. Oh
So
my god,
it's
so much
good
fun.
murder mystery, and yeah, one episode in, and yeah, we watch it together. So it's a fun
Oh,
thing.
it's so good. It's so good.
Yeah,
It's the best. I mean, I'm such a huge Steve Martin
good.
fan.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
So
so much fun.
what's something that's saving your butt?
Something saving my butt is my morning routine,
Oh, that's
honestly.
good.
Like getting out
Yeah.
and going for a run or a walk. Um, and I have been doing it long enough through this year that even though when we were traveling a lot, I could hang on to like the rails of it
Yeah.
and then come back to it
Yeah.
without a lot of trouble. And I'm so grateful for that time. And, it's like it moves around a little bit, but I think what's funny about routine, maybe it's ritual. I don't know how people talk about it, but like, um, it's not an exact time, and maybe it should be,
Yeah.
but it's like a kind of packaged
Yeah.
series of
Yeah.
things that I try to
Start.
do.
It's like, okay, here's what I do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
And
good.
I can kind of like shrink it if I need to,
Sure.
and I can expand it if I have the time. Um, but yeah, it's like it's so centering
Yeah,
and I feel so much better. What about you? What's
it's
saving
good.
your butt?
Yeah, I have an app called Things. It is my gigantic to-do list.
Okay.
It is my brain. It is. I have to get everything that I'm thinking of to do
Mm-hmm.
out of my head
Mm-hmm.
and in onto something. And so it's on my Mac, it's on my iPhone, iPad, so it's
Wow.
like, checking things off as they come up, and it just saves my
That is
time.
really
And again,
cool. I know you try to like onboard me into some of those like everything app support. I'm like, some of them I've adopted,
yeah,
like a Slack or a Trello, and these were 10 years ago that
right,
you showed me these things.
right.
But I really love the reminders app for that stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It works
That's
really well for
a lot of
me.
similar
Like Apple
features.
has very intuitive,
Good.
and then Notes.
Yeah.
But like
So you're
you're
adding more things to what's saving your butt based on what I'm talking about?
no, I mean, I'm just saying, like, I like how
Yeah.
you're saying like, okay, things, but I'm like, I can't.
You got your own thing. That's okay. It's
It's
all good.
not great, but I don't want to learn a new platform.
Why
But
not? That's
that's
good.
so you.
Yes.
You're the tech
Yeah.
gadgets guy.
That's it.
Things zap everybody for the productivity minimalist people,
Yes. It
probably.
is. It is
That
a beautiful app.
there's lots of
Well
people
done.
like that.
Good.
Good for you. Some of us want it to be a lot harder, and so
Yeah.
notes and reminders.
So that's our show. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We're so grateful to be able to share this with you. And
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see you next time.
Next time.
This is the In the Middle podcast with Josh and Sarah Siders. Visit inthemiddlecoaching.co for other resources, courses, and helpful tools.